today. And specifically, we wanted to talk about suicide and suicide prevention, and just why is it not more common to talk about suicide? It always seems to be something that just, it happens, and then you maybe talk about it after, or maybe not.
Yeah, so I think that's a question that people, general public, people in my field, like, we're always navigating that question, because all mental health is personal in terms of, sure, there's symptoms for things, but you still have your own experience. So I think that's the most difficult thing for people to tackle when they're trying to figure out, like, for example, like, how do they know if their friend's struggling, or their son, or their daughter, or, because I know they're showing it in, like, commercials now of, like, how are you doing? And the son says, oh, I'm good. And then, oh, they must be fine. Right. Or they're not isolating, they must be fine. So you have those kind of stereotypical things that, you know, are they isolating more? Is this person more quiet than they used to be? Are they not doing the things they used to enjoy? Right. There's some people that do all of those things. Yeah. And then we get shocked with finding out that they ended their own life. Right. And how does that happen? They seemed happy last week. All right. So there's a lot of factors that goes into that. I think it all comes down to, in the end, is how, it sounds so simple, and there's more to it than this, but, like, how to communicate. And how to communicate these days is probably a bit harder to navigate than in the past, due to technology, and then young people's interests and all that kind of stuff. But communicating constantly, like, that is the key. People go silent. Somebody says, oh, I'm doing okay. It's probably not good enough. Right. In terms of
dig a little deeper, right?
Dig a little deeper. The fine line there is, and that's why people come to people like me, and I completely get it, is, well, you also don't want to dig too much. Right. Alienate somebody, make them feel like you're pushing them, right? So it's that balance of checking in, and, hey, conversations on anything count. Right. Sometimes people think what I do is we have to get deep into the weeds of things. Sometimes just having basic conversations on what's going on at school, what's going on at this thing, what are you doing with your friends, gets them out of that mind space.
I'm okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. They don't want to just be asked, are you doing all right? Are you doing all right? That's like parental instinct or friend instinct. But there's way more to it than that, because a lot of times it's just when people are feeling low and not great about their life, sometimes that's just a snapshot in time. Right.
It's just that one moment, right?
That's right. Yeah. Right? Because, like, there's been many, I think it's good to kind of use celebrity cases of this, because, you know, it's high profile. Right. As I know, it's kind of wild how long ago it was, some of the celebrity deaths, but lead singer of Linkin Park, he seemed fine. Right. Everybody, look at the pictures, he's happy with his family. It's a moment in time. Right. Right. So we don't know, and people are good actors. Right. People are good actors.
There's never a bad time to open a conversation about suicide, right? I think there's a lot of people feel like, if I talk about it, that's going to push this person towards that. And that's not the case.
You know what? Again, that's a different kind of road to go down, because I think that you have to know, in my opinion, you have to know the person pretty well. Are they somebody that's easily reactive, or are they not? Because yes, we have people where you try to get them to talk about that, and it actually is triggering to them. Right. Because I've personally had clients that are in high school, and it's about 50-50, where half say, hey, look at, like, in our health class this week we talked about mental health, and today was suicide. And I noticed some people were really uncomfortable and actually had to leave the room, or people were really, like, wanting to learn about it. Right. So it is very touchy subject. You have to navigate that based on the people that you are talking to, or the person you're talking to. Right. So are they easily reactive? Do you know what's been going on in their life lately? Keeping things really general first, and test, like I always say, kind of like test that. How have things been going, right? I know things were rougher in the past, like, things going okay now. you talking to anybody lately? Like poke around a little bit. I'm finding that when you dive right in, probably not the best option, because there are people, because they're so highly aware, and things are very stressful for a lot of people right now, that actually can make them think about it more.
Right.
So it depends on who you're talking to, but keeping it general and kind of like easing your way in, definitely the best strategy there.
Perfect, thank you. And we've got 2 minutes left about, but so say somebody does talk to a friend or a family member and they say, you know what, I have been having these thoughts. What is the recommendation for somebody that maybe is struggling personally or having a family member or friend?
So I find best strategy is don't like overreact in terms, of course that's a serious subject, but when you're really reactive, then that's kind of like, it doesn't help that other person. So staying as calm as possible. I know not everybody does what I do, but staying as calm as possible. And you're just gonna provide solutions. Or you don't do what I do, but it can be, okay, what do you want, like, do you want to talk to somebody about that? Do you not want to talk to somebody right now? Do you feel like you're safe today? Or is that more of a general feeling that pops up once in a while, right? Poking around, again, that gentle kind of thing. And then if they say, you know what, I'm really not feeling like I'm safe today, and like I might do something, okay, and staying calm. Well, maybe we should go to one of our local services, talk to somebody, or do you think we should maybe just go to the hospital right now? And that's okay, right? You are allowed to go to, you know, they talk about there's issues in the emergency rooms being clogged, but that's an emergency. That's okay, right? Do you want to spend the night with me tonight? Do you want, maybe we can make an appointment to go talk to somebody maybe tomorrow if it's available. Right. So again, it's that kind of navigating, right? But also staying as calm as possible, because you don't want to panic a person that's already feeling
Panicked.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming in, Jordan. We always appreciate your candid conversations, and we will be right back after this.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Canada's Got Talent is getting ready for the biggest season ever.
874,624, 800.
With the biggest cash prize in Canadian TV history.
Howie, what are you doing?
874,626.
Rogers wrote a $1 million check for this season's CGT winner.
Yes! It's the $1 million season.
Thank you, Rogers.
Canada's Got Talent. This March on City TV.
Join Carolina Suarez for Tapestry Hall Style, Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Our ancestors came here from France to build a better life. We lived here happily for generations, until the British decided they wanted our land. The men were called to a meeting and then imprisoned. They demanded we swear an oath to their king and took everything, regardless. We were forced from Acadie, the only home we knew. Mon Acadie n'existera plus.
From 1755 to 1763, over 10,000 Acadians were ripped from their homeland. Despite this, Acadian culture endures in Atlantic Canada.
Weekly features on local events and organizations. Interviews with local community members speaking on what's happening in and around your community. Your region this week. All local, all year round. Fridays at 6 p.m. right here on Rogers TV.
After a night out with your friends, there's always options for getting home safely. You could call your BFF, your mom or dad, whoever you can count on for a safe ride home. You could call your favorite cab company or 1-888 taxi guy. Or you could use the Arrive Alive smartphone app to help you choose your ride. Be it a friend, transit, or taxi, getting home safely is app easy. Now available for iOS and Android devices. Visit arrivealive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
Welcome back to KickBack. I'm now joined by Susan Stewart, comedian and author. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
And for sharing your own story. And yeah, just thank you for being here, Susan.
Well, Ben, we go way back, don't we?
Yeah, so far back.
To, I'd say, October?
October-ish.
So I probably owe you at least one favor.
Yeah,
so it's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
I'm happy.
Thank you.
I'm happy to even the score.
Yeah. So we're going to jump right in.
Okay.
When did you begin to notice that something to do with your mental health had shifted?
We are going back to around 2002. So I started out in comedy in the millennium year, 2000. Everything at first was fine. You know, I was performing at comedy clubs around Toronto, and I went on tour with a woman comedy show. Everything was great. And then 2 or 3 years into my comedy career, I started to not feel like myself. I think that's the best way to describe it. Yeah, I didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. I was very serious. Now all of a sudden, I lost my sense of humor. My ability to focus and concentrate, like the cognitive abilities, were fading away quickly. I found it very, very tough to do just everyday little tasks. And I think another big change that happened was that I started to isolate. I withdrew from my family and friends. And I'm very outgoing, I'm very social. And so when I didn't want to participate in life and see my friends and go out, I basically lost interest in the things that I love to do as well. So isolation and general apathy were the big signs. And it had never happened before in my life. So I really didn't know what was going on. I couldn't even name it. It's like, oh, this is depression, or oh, this is anxiety. I was just turning into a different person.
It snuck up on you.
It really did. Yeah. It scared me. I was very scared about what was happening with me, but I had no language around it. And of course, back then, that's the early 2000s. So we were even quieter about mental health. The stigma was even greater.
And now, did you have any friends or family reach out when you started to show those signs and kind of draw back from your community?
Well, the person that was in my corner was my mother, because she just knows me so well, and she, would call and say, how are you? I'm not hearing from you. To this very day, if she doesn't hear from me for a while, she gets nervous. So she was in my corner, and I think a lot of my friends in comedy didn't know what to do with me. A lot of my personal friends didn't know what to do with me. I had one friend who had been down that road and was helping me normalize the experience, giving me language around it. But again, it was the early 2000s. A lot of people just didn't know
didn't know what to do
say
with that,
or do.
Have that conversation around, oh, this might be what you're experiencing. And
yeah, it was, let's see, it was around 2002. And so when it was just tough to do everyday little things, like you can imagine how impossible stand-up comedy seemed at that point, right? So when I was struggling to get out of bed in the morning and put one foot in front of the other, I couldn't fathom getting back on stage and doing what I loved to do, doing what I knew how to do. And so I quit. And then there was this reputation in the comedy community in Toronto, like what happened to Susan Stewart. So,
which adds an entirely different element to you, right? To now have to feel like you need to overcome that.
Yeah, in fact, when I started to feel better, thank you, antidepressants, and I was kind of resurfacing. I was too afraid to go back to comedy. I was really too afraid of what the other comedians were thinking and saying, what my reputation was like, and so I stayed away for some time.
And how did your experience with depression, how did that shape your career, your comedy career, and your career in general going forward from there?
I think that's a very good question, Ben. I think what it has inspired me to do is validate people's struggles. Like what I try to do with my comedy, I do a lot of corporate comedy, a lot of corporate speaking engagements. And so whether it's a comedy show or it's, I'm saying whatever I want, or if it's corporate, what I think I'm most passionate about now is, validating the audience, helping them to feel less alone, helping them to feel seen and heard, and go, life is tough, and stress is a natural human experience, and it can affect our mental health. Right. I see you, I hear you, I get you. And so, yes, I will throw out ideas about how to see the lighter side of life, but I'm most passionate about just going, I get it.
Right.
I've been there. Yeah. So I think that answered your question.
Yeah, and now do you think that must stem from you, that's probably what you could have used back in the early 2000s, right? Is having somebody be able to say and validate you.
Yeah, it would have been powerful to have had someone, especially a funny person, stand on stage and normalize what I was experiencing and showing me that, hey, it gets better. Here's me on the other side of it. All that kind of stuff. Yeah, it would have been great to have role models and thought leaders like that. Just, again, making me feel like I wasn't crazy, that I was just a human being with a brain that sometimes, acts up a little. But yeah, that would have been powerful. Right. I'm so glad that is changing.
Right. And how does it make you feel that you are a part of that change?
Yeah, I think there's just so much more meaning now to my work. Like I'm a big fan of Maria Bamford. She's a quirky comedian. Not everyone really loves her. She's really out there, but she's very open about her mental health struggles. And so I'm inspired by someone like that. And I don't know, like for me to help people along with giving them a laugh, I mean, for me, that's the best thing. It's very fulfilling.
Well, and I think it's really accessible for the audience too, to be able to say, you know what, it's not the stereotypical clinical, this is what it is and this is how you overcome it. This is now, I can enjoy this. This is entertaining. It's the humanity, right? That's what it is. It's just such a human part of the comedy. And I think it's so powerful when we can see what's funny about it. Right.
There's, what can I say to you, Ben? It's tough to be a comedian these days, with the sensitivity.
Right.
Everyone can be very offended all the time. Yeah. So my work now is saying, hey, I think it's important that we also really see what's funny about everything, even the really tough stuff. Right. When we can laugh, when we can see even the little shred of the humor in mental health or any other struggle, anything that's tough or dark in life, I think helps us to have a healthy perspective on it, helps us to get through it.
Right.
If we're laughing about it, that's resiliency, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful way to look at it. And it's so important just to have those conversations and to be able to, if you can laugh about something, right, it's much easier to be able to share that instead of maybe just talking about it normal, just being like, this is what I'm struggling with now. If you can put a funny spin on it, because life is funny most of the time.
Yeah, and the tough stuff, when you can see the funny in it, I think it actually shrinks it in size. Right? Because when we get up in our heads, we're not talking about it, and we're just, ruminating, and it can double or triple the size of it, right? It can get very large, especially when we're not speaking of it at all. But when we're laughing about it, when we're seeing the funny in it, I think that brings it down into more of a, I don't know, it appears more manageable.
That's what I was going to say, yes. And it's just something that now you're able to just deal with it. I think a lot of people, they stay stuck in their heads so much and they feel like they're alone and just in this area where they just need to say something to somebody to realize, pick anybody and just realize that chances are that person's also dealing with that. But we've got to go to break. We'll be right back after this with more from Susan.
January 18th on City TV.
Let's get to work.
The wait
Remember me?
is over.
Fight fire with fire.
Looks like we're going for a ride.
Law & Order Thursday returns with all new episodes.
NYPD, show me your hands. Don't move.
We're gonna get this guy together, like we always do.
Law & Order, SVU, and Organized Crime. New seasons premiere January 18th on City TV or stream it on City TV Plus.
Hey folks, it's me, Giovanni Petiti, the host of Not Tonight. It's the new late night talk show right here on Rogers TV. We got fabulous guests, a lot of laughs. It's just like the Jimmy Kimmel Show. If you order the Jimmy Kimmel Show on Wish. So join me Sunday at 10 o'clock right here on Rogers TV. Nice.
It's the personal finance show that dares to ask those money questions you've always wanted to. Join Mike Bregueth when he talks with experts on all aspects of money. Money Matters with Mike Bregueth, Thursdays at 8 p.m. on Rogers.
Do you like talk radio? Catch a televised simulcast of The Mike Farwell Show. Listen to callers rant or rave. Watch interviews with guests on topics impacting your community. The Mike Farwell Show, weekdays from 10 till noon on Rogers TV.
We fought our way through Italy and then headed for Amsterdam, sweeping for Germans along the way. Our worst fear was to catch a bullet in these last hours of the war.
I was 15 when the Nazis invaded the Netherlands. More than 100,000 Dutch Jews never came home. Our men were put into forced labor. By 1945, we were starving. The food drops gave us hope. And then the Canadians came.
Before Amsterdam, I couldn't have explained why we were there, all those years away from home, but the Dutch showed us why it mattered.
Papa wanted me to bring some soldiers home to thank them personally. And that's when I first saw Wilf. And I invited him over that afternoon.
Marguerite Blaise married Lieutenant Wilf Gildersleeve. They moved to Vancouver, where they raised 8 children. Today, the Dutch still remember the Canadians who liberated them.
The regulars, the guys who keep this place in business. Last week, they had something to celebrate. Jason had just finished university. So they toasted his profs, his TAs, his old roommates. Well, they toasted just about everyone. But I worry about and take care of my guys. So even when I know they're not driving, sometimes that means bringing them a little surprise. And then they had a drink to me.
Brought to you by Smart Serve Ontario and Arrive Alive, Drive Sober.
Welcome back to KickBack. Again, I am joined by Susan Stewart, comedian and author. Again, thank you so much for being here, Susan.
No worries, my pleasure. Still my pleasure.
Still your pleasure.
Yeah, even after the first segment.
Well, you know what? That says something, right?
I know.
Right?
We got something, Ben. You and me. I feel it.
Show on the road. Speaking of that, you have an upcoming show.
Yes, I do.
Here in Brantford, Ontario.
Yes, at the Rope Factory.
Yes. Can you share a little bit about this awesome upcoming show?
Well, it is a show about mental health. Mm-hmm. It's called A Bit More Than a Rough Patch, a comedy show about taking mental health seriously. And the show, it focuses on my mental health journey and a more recently very challenging part of that journey. In the spring, I dealt with a clinical depression and experienced a high-grade level of anxiety, panic attacks, insomnia. And that led to a mental health crisis, which led to hospitalization and led to a treatment program. And so when I was in the treatment program, it was 9 weeks. It was at Homewood Health Center in Guelph. I was FaceTiming with my partner, and I referred to the whole situation as a rough patch.
Right.
And she just like about fell over. She was like, "What did you just call it? What did you just say about this whole situation?" And so, I mean, there I was downplaying it. It is a show about how we can downplay mental health because of things like stigma. So yes, it was a bit more than a rough patch. I admit that now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just like, I think it just speaks to how we don't want to be honest about how we're feeling, or honest about what happened when we weren't feeling good. So yeah.
And why do you think that is, that we as humans, when we experience something like that, why do we downplay it?
I think that's like, there's a lot of answers there. I will say that for myself, definitely stigma. Like I realized I had personal stigma. I mean, I'm someone who has spoken about mental health on stage. I have written books about mental health.
Yes.
There's that topic in my books, and I was like, oh, not this, not me. Like I thought that was part of my past, and now I've got it all sorted out.
You had the tools and everything figured out.
Right. It was a happy ending. I got back on my feet. I fell into the speaking career that I have now. All was well.
Right.
And so there was that feeling of, oh, not this again. Oh no, that's in the past. So there was that fight, that inner struggle. Also, I think there was shame. Like look, Ben, I've written 3 self-help books.
3 significant length books.
Yeah, they're a bit more than a brochure.
You're right.
And I stand on stage and I do these motivational talks and I make people laugh. And so there was this I'm totally off brand here. I can hardly get out of bed again. So yeah, stigma, shame, and denial. Nice combination there, don't you think?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, real trifecta.
Real,
Yes.
Were the symptoms similar to what you had experienced early on, like in the early 2000s, to what you had experienced more recently?
I'm going to say there are classic symptoms, and I think anyone who has struggled with mental health will chime in here and nod. It's that isolation. It's that you go into like survival mode, right? So anything extracurricular in life just fades away. Now you're just trying to get through the day. So things like sense of humor, creativity, motivation, curiosity, just all goes away. Because now you're just simply wanting and trying to survive.
Right.
So isolation, lack of interest in things is a huge one. Just staying in bed, that's a big one. They were all very familiar, and that scared me. I was like, oh no. Oh my God, like here we are. We're here again.
Do you think that because you knew what you had experienced before and that familiar feeling, do you think did that push you to get help sooner this time around because you had experienced that, or because there was that bit of denial? Like how did that shape that?
I want to say yes.
Yeah.
I want to say to you that I saw those symptoms and I got right on it.
Right.
But I can't because I'd be lying to you.
Right.
And so I was like, no.
Not again.
This is a new version of me. I'm older, I'm wiser. And so at first my reaction was, I got this.
Right.
I can handle this on my own. Just worked out even more. I meditated. I, listened to more inspirational podcasts, all that stuff. Right. But unfortunately, the symptoms worsened. And I was still uninterested in getting help until I had to.
Right.
Like it got that bad that it was like, okay, I admit it. I need to go see a doctor.
And what would you say to somebody that is maybe watching at home and experiencing those symptoms, or they know somebody that is maybe starting to distance themselves and isolate? What would you tell them based on your experience, what would you tell them to do?
I would tell them probably that it is okay to not be okay. It's really, I think that's, there's an interesting thing. There's a downfall to the self-improvement movement, right? Where we're all trying to be happy all the time. And being less than happy creates what I call meta feelings, right? We have feelings about our feelings. And so when we're not feeling great, then we feel shame, we feel embarrassment, we feel inadequate, we feel all these sorts of things. So I think it's important that there is someone just to say, hey, you know what? You're not happy right now, and that's okay. We have to let go of that lofty goal that self-improvement has set out for us to feel a certain way all the time. I think that's it, is just to encourage that person to accept that this is what's going on. If I could go back and do it all over again, I would have accepted the fact that I wasn't feeling good. Because when you accept something, right, when you're okay with it, that's when you can move forward. That's when you can now seek solution. But if you're struggling with it, if you're denying it, if you're resisting it, fighting against it, then that's a problem. Yeah, I think that's where we can find ourselves perhaps leading to a crisis.
And again, Susan, thank you so much for joining us today. If you want to learn more from Susan, head to susanstewart.ca.
Yeah.
If you're interested in attending the A Bit More Than a Rough Patch show coming up, you can find tickets on Eventbrite,
yes,
which is very exciting. So definitely check that out. And thank you so much, Susan. I've really enjoyed our conversation today.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And we'll be right back after this.
Kitchener's perfect music mix is on Chime 96.7. So every song is someone's favorite song. On Chime 96.7.
Remember me?
Let's get to work. Just like old times.
Looks like we're going for a ride.
We're doing this my way.
David Prang from the Chamber of Commerce Brantford Brant speaks with community members about events and organizations that impact the city of Brantford and the county of Brant. Chamber TV, Thursdays at 6:30 p.m., right here on Rogers TV.
With Rogers TV, you can cheer on the home team from the comfort of your living room. We'll head to the rink, the field, the court, or the pitch, so you don't have to. Tune in and cheer on your local amateur athletes on Rogers TV.
You must be the reporter. Come with me.
So, Miss McGill, how does it feel being Canada's famous women engineer?
The real story is the work we've done retooling this factory.
To build the Hawker Hurricane?
Indeed. 40 planes last month with a capacity of up to 100. Our fighters are over England as we speak. Of course, it pains me to see airplanes mass-produced like boxcars or baby carriages. But in war, we make concessions in favor of innovation.
You must feel at home, though, managing all of these women.
I'm not here to manage women.
Well, you must admit it is an unusual job.
I'm the chief engineer here. I do what engineers do. That's all.
What are we doing now?
We're to win this war. We need to know how she flies.
Elsie McGill was the world's first female aeronautical engineer. She oversaw Canada's production of Hawker Hurricanes during the Second World War, earning her the nickname Queen of the Hurricanes.
Join Carolina Suarez for Tapestry Hall Style, Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Everybody knows not to drink and drive, but some people still think it's okay to take drugs and drive. Police have the authority, the ability, and the tools to determine if drivers are impaired by legal or illegal drugs. And because drug-impaired drivers can pose just as great a risk as drunk drivers, they face the same penalties, like the loss of their driver's license, a criminal record, fines, and more. A message from the RCMP, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, and Arrive Alive, Drive Sober.
Welcome back to KickBack. I am very excited to have you inside of our living room today. This has been a great hour of mental health education and conversation. I'm now joined by John Ball. John, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, glad to be here.
Yeah. We are talking about The Intruder, your recent book. Can you explain to us what is The Intruder?
Okay. Well, this book is about my journey to beat negative self-talk. I went 34 years in this charmed life. Everything I did seemed to turn out good. My parents were positive. Everything was great. I had a business. We went on Profit magazines. We were 16 on Profit magazines, like top 100 companies. It was great. Then all of a sudden it changed. I thought it was what somebody said to me, something that said to me. They suggested something that changed my perception, which led me down this path, and I couldn't lead my company. I couldn't lead my team anymore. It turned out not to be that at all. But the negative self-talk was coming on, something I'd never had before. So, it's negative it's any inner discussion and suggestion that is sort of work to hinder your ability to achieve, even break your confidence. That's what it is, right?
Right.
And the intruder was, I couldn't figure out what it was, and it felt like there was something new, somebody was there intruding on me, so I called it The Intruder. And the way I explained it, because for myself, I need to understand, right? Why all of a sudden? If you were to drive somebody to work every single day, and that person was spewing negative dialogue to you and being mean and hurtful, what would you do? What would you do with that person? Would you continue? You would defend yourself. You probably wouldn't drive them to work anymore, right?
Right.
You wouldn't let it happen. But because we feel it's ourselves, we placate, we pander, we're soft with ourselves. We let it happen. But with somebody like that, we not only let it happen, we let it to our house. We let it in our bed. We eat supper with it. We go on vacation with it. And if that was anybody else, we wouldn't let that happen. And if we asked a friend of ours, hey, this person's saying this to me, what advice do you think they'd give? And alternatively, what advice would you give that person?
Right.
And in the back of my book, I have a 9-step negative self-talk worksheet, and it goes through that. More common sense than anything, really, And it was just something to get me through it, because, like I said, we were losing money. We couldn't figure it out, but we had just had a fire. 11,000 square feet was destroyed, and then we uncovered a fraud. I thought it was something else. Regardless of what it was, the effect was still there, and this negative self-talk still came on.
Right. And how long did that negative self-talk last, like in your journey?
It lasted a long time, and it got stronger. It got stronger because I practiced it.
Right.
And that's really what it comes down to. If you practice guitar, you're going to become a great guitar player. Right. And if you want to make a change, you have to practice for that change. Like, I equate it to your handedness. If you're a right-handed person, you've done that for 10,000 hours. You're an expert at that.
Right.
If you want to become a left-handed writer, sure, you can do it, but you have to keep at it. And that's really what I found, is the things that I found worked, I had to keep at it.
Right. And what was your experience writing The Intruder? Like, that must have been quite the journey, putting your thoughts and your experiences into a book like this.
Well, my biggest problem was I wrote it 3 times because I really didn't have the stigma. I didn't want anybody to know. I just beat the negative self-talk. But really what it came down to, and this is the first time I'll say it, it's about suicide. It brought me to a point where I had no hope. I was past that. It was a place that I call the edge of the world. And at that point, sometimes when everything's there, at that moment, I know what it feels like. I wasn't manic, I wasn't angry, I was calm, almost in a trance-like state. I had let this negative self-talk, I basically let it take over my life. And it's just suggestion. Right. And there's a number of times in science that it fools you altogether. I look for correlations in my book where we're fooled and tricked by science, like things like the rubber hand illusion, where there's a rubber hand and we actually feel the sensation, right. Or the way ketamine does with you think it's not yours, so you don't feel it. or the eye and the optic nerve, there's a scotoma or a blind spot. It's actually fooling us. Not everything that we say to ourselves is correct.
Right.
And it's not right either, right. As these scientific, they're sort of parlor tricks, right?
Right.
But, and that's what we have to know, because between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts per day is what the National Science Foundation says that we have.
Which blows my mind.
Yes, like, and that's different people, right?
Yeah.
But out of which 85% of those thoughts are negative, and 90% are the same the next day.
Right.
What's that telling us,
Right.
And it just blows my mind, right? But it was the stigma that stopped me. I finally got it to it where it wasn't making any sense. I had to just say it, right? It's because at the end of the journey, I was able to rid myself of the negative self-talk. It still tries to come back,
right?
But I was able to do that.
Well, and it just that you just think about it, and we are what we think. What we think about tends to expand, and so if we're having 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts a day, and then how many was it repeated? 95 are the exact same thoughts over and over and over again. Yeah. That's just wild.
Well,
what we do to ourselves, right?
Absolutely. We're told no by the time we're 15. I think it's 40,000 times or something crazy like that. Yeah. And no, you can't, but we're not told yes, you can. I was the opposite. And I won't go into the stories in the book and stuff, but I don't think I was told no, you can't 5 times.
Right.
I went through life with no fear at all. I quit school at 16, joined a rock and roll band, came back, started a company. I was on Profit 100. It was crazy. It was just, and then all of a sudden everything changed.
Right.
But what happened was, it was an effect, because sometimes negative self-talk can be triggered by a mental issue that you're having, or it can trigger a mental issue.
Right.
What was happening with me, we were losing money. I just didn't realize that somebody was stealing. There was a fraud going on. Later, I figured it out.
Yeah.
And we just had a fire. It was all the stress that turned this PTSD, and severe depression. And unless somebody's been in a severe depression, a profound one, they don't know what it's like.
Right.
I mean, it becomes where it's just really something, and it's tough.
Yeah, and was it that journey to just admitting to yourself what you were dealing with that helped lead you to that point of being able to say, you know what, I'm going to move past this?
Well, I looked for everything to try to fix it. I researched everything I could. It was years of it. I went to San Diego to primatologists. I read everything I could. I looked at, different ways that the, SSRIs and different types of pharmaceuticals that we use, different types of therapy, mindfulness, the Buddhist noting, different things like that. And in the end, really, what I was looking for was how can I fix this? How can I end it, right? And the one thing that started to help was as soon as I removed what are, the literary devices, so the possessive pronouns, adjectives, and determiners, they indicate possession. As soon as I started to separate it from myself, non-self, and didn't feel it was me, I called it the intruder, and that's what I called it, right?
Right, and unfortunately, this commercial is now intruding on us, but we will be right back with more from John after this break.
Today, I helped a senior find transportation to an important medical appointment.
Today, I helped a new mom find virtual programming so she didn't feel so isolated.
Today, I helped someone understand new government supports.
Every day, 211 navigators connect Canadians to critical government and community programs and services.
211. Help starts here.
Hey folks, it's me, Giovanni Pettiti, the host of Not Tonight. It's the new late night talk show right here on Rogers TV. We got fabulous guests, a lot of laughs. It's just like the Jimmy Kimmel Show, if you order the Jimmy Kimmel Show on Wish. So join me Sunday at 10 o'clock right here on Rogers TV. Nice.
I'm Wendell Clark with a word about winning. We all know it takes a team effort in any sport and with any challenge. You can be a part of the winning team that shuts out impaired driving. Whether you're out on the town or just hanging out with friends, drink responsibly. Always have a plan for a safe ride home for yourself, your family, and your friends. You'll be helping to shut out impaired driving.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
My Uncle Cheney was one of over 150,000 Indigenous children that were taken to residential schools between the 1800s and 1996. My uncle ran away from school wanting to get home to his mom and dad, and sadly he didn't make it and died of exposure. When Gord Downey found out about my late Uncle Cheney's story, he wrote Secret Path, a series of poems that became an album, then a graphic novel, a documentary, and a concert. Gord met my family, and together we formed the Gord Downey and Cheney Winjack Fund. Together we are sharing Secret Path and other reconciliation resources with legacy schools, setting up legacy spaces across Canada, and hosting events like Secret Path Week to inspire all Canadians to engage in reconciliation. Before he left us, Gord asked us all to do something.
You're gonna figure it out.
Will you join us? Together we can make Canada a better place.
David here, reminding you that Lions TV Bingo is right here on Rogers TV. We've got a new look, a new prize board. We actually have a full card game of $3,500. Indeed, biggest we've ever had. See you soon.
Welcome back to KickBack. Again, we are joined by John Ball, speaker, author, motivator. John, we are talking about your book, The Intruder.
The third edition.
Yeah, the
Every
third
edition gets more truthful as we go, you know.
Which I think is really, really neat that you shared that. And the fact that you have shared that you've changed it 3 times, right? And you've gone deeper each time. Before the break, you had mentioned a stat about the fact that we have between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts per day, and 95% of those are negative, and they're repeated over to the next day. What would it feel like, and do you know what it feels like to be all positive?
Well, I don't know about all positive, but I know what it feels like because once we remove that from ourselves, think about all the space we have. When I got to what I call the edge of the world, right to the bottom of the bottom, the most profound place where this intruder was leading me, and I'll catch myself, my negative self-talk, that you're just pandering to it more, right? I know what you can do because in a very short amount of time, I wrote 30 or 40 songs, did a CD, recorded it all, did it all, wrote a good part of 3 books, and people were saying, well, did you have all this? No, it was this emptiness. I had all this free space, you know, right. But to get there was a price, you know, because the way I was feeling before that, it was at the worst place possible. You know, I had gotten to the point where, like I said, we had that fire, destroyed 11,000 square feet, and a fraud was uncovered. And one of our best friends had sold hundreds of thousands of dollars, which it always reverts, it hurts your home life too. Right. But this negative self-talk was getting stronger and stronger. So when it was over, the dust all settled, I decided to move over, and you know, I won't go into details, but a succession plan just didn't work out for me. So I ended up losing the family I'd had for 25 years, and my wife and I divorced. I was at the lowest point possible. I was where hope wasn't even an option, you know? And the internal child went from the usual dialogue to a very stern, you know, quiet, profound, you know, it was leading me to the edge.
Right.
And it was telling me what to do. Right. And I was listening to it. I was in a hypnosis. I was almost in the dreamlike state, you know? And it was the worst place ever. And at that point, I was in my car ready to do it. And I'll tell you, I don't even feel, I can't even believe I'm saying it because it's so crazy, but I wasn't mad, I wasn't manic. And then all of a sudden, somebody walked by, it was really early, and they startled me, and they interrupted me. They said, good morning, and when it interrupted me, it felt like something hit me. And I was snapped out of it.
Right.
And it scared the life out of me because I had after that moment, I didn't have any inclination to end my life.
Right.
And then I went from there into everything I studied, and that interruption. I said, if that can do the same thing, maybe that interruption can help with the negative self-talk. So I'm studying it, I'm looking through 10 years of notes, and it was really stopping the negative self-talk as it's coming, interrupting it with a command every single time was what did it. And I did it more and more, and eventually that was the habit I practiced. There's other things too. If you do a journal and you do a negative self-thought journal or a worry journal, you write down what you think can happen and what you're worried about. Then later you go and write down the actuals. Once you see that you've wasted 4 months of your life on things that never happened, you understand that this voice is a lie. It's not giving you anything positive. So you have to come to terms, you have to do it in a command position, you have to interrupt it every time. And there's lots of things in the book I go through, like all those parlor tricks. How does the body and, physiologically and pharmacologically fool you into thinking, a suggestion can become a perception.
Right.
And then the interruption is what worked for me. And then finally, when you do it enough, it becomes, non-conscious. It just happens. And that's where the deletion comes in. That's the stages of psychosomatic change. That's what I call it, right? Just for my own thing, and it's all for me.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna, oh, yeah.
Please go ahead. Yep.
I know. I was just going to say that it's so just powerful to think about the fact that it's like it starts with that voice inside of your head. It's something that I also have, and I'd be surprised if not everybody experienced it at some level. But just the fact that what you're doing with this book and what you're talking about is so powerful because it's teaching people how to overcome that.
Well,
right?
it's my journey, and it's like I said, I'm not a doctor or anything, but really, if you really get down to the common sense of it, what if that was somebody saying it to you? And if we did a role play, and you told me what those things were, and I said them out loud, the reaction would be different, quite profound.
Right.
There's these mental health poster campaigns plastered everywhere with "Let's talk," and it's raising awareness. But really, when I went through my worst of it, where it came out to was, I had lots of people helping me through the fire and the fraud. I went to each of them and I said, listen, can you help me? I'm thinking of harming myself. I don't have a doctor. 3 of them in a row sent me the same response that said, talk to your family doctor, which I told them I didn't have one, and go to the hospital if you're feeling that way.
Right.
And fast forward a little bit, I was in the hospital for an unrelated event. It wasn't a hospital around here. And somebody walked in and said to the triage nurse, I'm thinking of harming myself and I'm feeling down. She turned, snickered, and said to her friends, we got another one, and told this person to go sit down. I witnessed that, and the person left. We have to do better than that, And I called the number on the poster, and I went down, I was speaking with the person, they were asking me questions, and then they said, have you ever thought of harming yourself or killing yourself? Yes. Do you have a plan? I said, yes. What was it? They said. And as I'm looking down, I'm thinking, they're not listening to me. So I said some gibberish, purple dishwasher monkey. They just wrote something down. They didn't listen to me. So if they're not listening to me, I'm not saying they're all like that, but this isn't working, We have to do something more, It's, there's some stigma involved in it, right? But, I wrote it down here anyways, We see the poster campaigns, and sure, it's raising awareness, but they've received some praise, but is it the controversy for the corporatization of mental health? Is it we're shifting the responsibility back to the private sector? Because it's not working. What we need to do is we need to go to these people, find the way, talk to them, get some boots on the floor, And I was looking into, I think I spoke to you a little bit about it, from my own experience, which is essentially centered around negative self-talk and its destructive potential. When I was at the edge of the world, the internal chatter went from usual dialogue to a dark, self-critical voice that has increasing intensity, I said, and with commands of self-contempt which lead to self-destruction or self-hurt. Research has been working on something, and there's the Firestone Assessment of Self-Destruction Thoughts. They're trying to, they've termed the voice along with painful effects. They were able to develop a framework and sort of 84 questions to get down to people reporting frequency and severity of their feelings so they can create an alarm, because we just don't have an alarm. Right. We have alarms for everybody else, but if we're going to the hospital and that's what we're getting, or if really my healthcare providers, I told them I don't have a doctor right now. They're telling me to talk to my family doctor. They were form letters because it's not working. We need to get people on that. We need to listen to them. Not say it's going to get better, we're just going through a stage. No, it's not. They need to see that this voice doesn't necessarily mean it's correct. Right. Because the thoughts of self-harm especially have to come, it has to be a command of something. And this is I think it's the negative self-talk. And so does Dr. Firestone here in this report. It's an interesting report. I'm not a doctor, but I love what he's saying about it, this internal voice. And sometimes it's not just a voice that people go into a trance. They said it's a suicidal trance. I've been there. I know what it feels like. And I've talked to other people that have either failed at the attempt or didn't. And all of them, same thing. Once they got away from it, they didn't want to do it. It's interrupting the moment. Interrupting that moment is the most important thing to save these people. We have to talk to the people we haven't seen that know we're going through dark times. We have to go out there and get some boots on the ground. Not let's talk. Right. No offense to them. Yeah. I mean, they're trying.
And we've got 1 minute left. Yep. But what would you have wanted to hear when you had reached out to those 3 friends and they kind of gave you that, just this is what it is? And
they weren't just friends. They were physicians and doctors and so forth. And they're just covering their butts or just playing hot potato with this. You know, sure, there's a stigma to it, but what can we do about it? Right. Because it's real. People are like, everybody has negative self-talk, you know? And some of us are able to, move it into something positive. Like athletes, you're telling me when they're doing free throws, they're not saying you're going to miss, or golfers. Right. That's the difference, right? It's all what you think and what you perceive is what you are, you know, and that's it. I know because I've been there. I know what it feels like.
Right. And if people want to hear more from you or about you and your book, where can they find that?
johnball.ca. Yeah. I'm happy to do any speeches, and I try not to have any opinions because everybody's trying to help. It's hard. Right. Because it's also subjective. What somebody says they feel like. It's not can't do a blood test.
Right. Well, thank you so much, John, for joining us today. I really appreciate you coming in and sharing The Intruder. And we will see you in the next hour of KickBack.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
Heartbeat of Mother Earth, I feel you and embrace your warmth. I see you dancing through the trees. Your song floats on the summer breeze. Community, we come together. We are the voice of our ancestors. Thankful for how much you bless us. Feel the thunder in the drum. All our voices sing as one. Feel the power